everyone! I am going to upload 2 videos this week for you. The first video is an introduction in the UK. What you should have as well is a Google Doc assigned to you, and that first page has questions on it that are going to be helpful for your notes. I'm then going to record a second video, and what that's going to be is us kind of properly diving into the study theme we're going to look at. The reason I'm doing this video is, for some of you, this is new and you need to have this background information for the rest of it to make sense. What I will say, you are higher now. How you record these notes is up to you. I will be checking the work that you do. I will be providing feedback on your answers. However, if you choose to do bullet pointed lists, I'm not going to force you to make that into sentences. The best advice I can give for this course is write in sentences where you can. If you are a fan of mind maps or of highlighting, do it as we go through or every couple of weeks. One of the struggles some people have is they'll do the whole democracy unit and then they'll forget what they did in week 1. This is a fast-paced course. I'm trying to get through as much as possible so that when we get back to school, we're recapping some of it or doing practical things to help embed it into our head properly. If you want help or advice on how to make the notes, please ask. I can do a Google Meets or I can do a video on that as well, but it is up to you. You will have essays coming up as well. I will do a lesson on what a higher essay needs to be. I'm not just going to say, go right on democracy. I will talk you through that and we'll do examples together so you know what it is. When you're starting making your notes, what you'll find is that I will talk about examples a lot. You have got to have examples. For those that did national last year, you'll know that, numbers would be a nice addition. It would be great if you can remember that. I'm going to be blunt, for higher, there's not maybe, you have to. Your marks when you're writing essays in your exam come from your knowledge. So the House of Commons is where MPs sit. An example, for example, the MP for my constituency is blah, blah, blah. You then need to provide analysis and evaluation. So well done to those of you who did the work for week 1, because I asked you to start looking at analysis and evaluation words. That will be a big help. We will build up to that, but I would definitely recommend that as we go through these lessons, as you watch the videos and make notes or answer questions, make sure you've got examples. Every week, I will give you questions to do. If you complete those questions and you write in sentences, you will have the information you will need. I know some of you like making your own notes, so it might be that you take notes as I speak through something on the video and you look at question 3 and go, oh, well, my notes answer that. Don't rewrite it. That's not a problem. The questions are making sure you have everything you're going to need to pass the unit. So, like I say, if you've done it a different way, that's fine. But some people just prefer top question. So, lesson 1. I'm going to give you a brief explanation of how the UK Parliament works. You need to be able to describe the difference between UK and Scotland Parliaments and explain who makes decisions. What I've also got at the bottom of that box, ST, that is study theme. So I'm calling this study theme 1. So this fits into our study theme of how do representatives hold our government to account? So I'm going to try and make clear links to the study themes, particularly for those organising notes or colour coding, so you know what it matches up with. Should also add, if you don't know already, you're about to find out, I really enjoy the politics sections of modern studies. I know they're not everyone's favourites, but they are my favourite and I will get quite excited at times. Today for this video, I'm going to look at 4 different things that I recommend you have an understanding of. Holyrood versus Westminster, what the executive is, what the legislative is, and how bills become laws. Should say, I'm not going to repeat things, or I'm going to try not to, so pause the video, stop at any time you need to at your own pace. So, Holyrood versus Westminster. If you don't know, or as a recap, Holyrood is the fancy name of the Scottish Parliament. It is based in Edinburgh. It has only been there since 1999, so it's just turned 20 years old. The current First Minister is Nicola Sturgeon. It's her job to lead the Scottish government. That's the group of people that make laws, decisions, the group who are currently deciding on, do we stay in lockdown? Do we not? Do we ease restrictions? What is the appropriate thing to do? They also create laws around devolved matters. Now, I've given you some examples there. There are loads more, but those who did national last year, hopefully you'll remember the easiest three tend to be education, health, social work, or police. They can't, for example, make immigration laws, and I'm going to come to that next. So remember, Scotland devolved. Westminster is in London. If I talk about Westminster, I'm going to be talking about the Houses of Parliament. The Houses of Parliament is the collective name given for everything together. Because in London, what you have are what we call two chambers. So you have the House of Commons, which is the green seated chamber. So in this picture, in case anyone's colourblind, it's on the right-hand side. That's where our members of Parliament, our MPs, sit, okay? They are elected, usually every 5 years, but the past few years, I'm trying not to roll my eyes, the past few years that has been slightly different. But the green one, so the bit on the right-hand side, that's where members of Parliament sit, MPs. Traditionally, it's called Commons because it's common people representing common people. On the other side, you have the House of Lords. So traditionally, their seats are red. They're on the left-hand side of that picture. They are not elected. They assume their position of Lord, Lady, Baron, Baroness, Earl, so on and so forth, usually through appointment. So that means someone has asked them, do you want to sit here? Normally because they have an expertise in an area or they're very clued up on something. They might be a professor in a certain subject. Both of these chambers form the Houses of Parliament. Both are involved in making laws in the UK that affect the whole of the UK. These are reserved matters. They are reserved for the UK Parliament, and it includes stuff like the military, immigration, our benefit system, so universal credit, and interest rates. So the bank interest rates, you might hear that on the news quite a lot and be like, I don't know what that is. They set it. Political parties. These are some of the main political parties. To make crystal clear, I will not ever tell you one party is better than the other, ever. I don't believe that. As a modern studies teacher, it is my job to be impartial. That means I take no view or opinion. I will tell you that I go and vote in every election because it's important, but I will never tell you who for. So I am never going to favour one party over another, to make that clear. One of the tasks you've got to do is go and have a look into the main political parties. So you've got the Conservatives, usually blue, Labour Party, red, Lib Dems or Liberal Democrats in orange, Green Party, SNP in yellow, and the relatively newly formed Brexit Party. The links that you've got here, you will be able to access these links on the slides if you open the slides separately. The top link is from the UK Parliament, so it is made by the House of Commons and Lords together, their communications team, and it will tell you every single political party that currently has a member of Parliament. You can set up your own political party if you really wanted when you're older. You've got to be a bit older, I'm afraid. If you could stand an election, but you might not win the seat, so you might not become the Member of Parliament because you didn't win the election. In that case, you wouldn't be on that website because you didn't win a seat. When I say a seat, that just means you've the MP who will sit there in Parliament and represent you. So if I was elected, I would be the MP and have the seat for Aberdeen North. So the seat just means who are you representing? There's also a really good site there, simplepolitics.co.uk is fantastic, particularly for those who maybe find the democracy unit challenging. I know it is one that can be quite confusing because for many of you, you've not had direct experience of voting or pressure groups, petitions and things. I would definitely recommend having a look there. It puts it into really easy language as well. This is it. You'll pause the screen if you need to. You've also got this on slides. You will see that the Conservative Party, which is led by Boris Johnson, has a majority. A majority government is one where they have over half of the members of Parliament in their party. There are 650 members of parliament. So if you really go and add all those up, you should get 650. I've not actually checked, but you should, unless there is an election coming up for someone who's maybe given up the job. Half of 650 is, good maths, 325. That means the magic number is 325. If after an election, the biggest political party, so the one with the most members of parliament, has 324 or less, they can still be the biggest, but it's going to be really, really difficult to pass laws. If they get over 325, that means they have a majority. The easiest thing that means is they have a majority. If they really want to make a law and all of their members of parliament, all of their MPs vote with them, every single other MP and every single other party could vote against it and it would still pass because it's over half. Rewind that and listen again if you need, but majority is over half of the MPs in one party, and that can make it really easy to pass laws. I will try and cater to different styles of learning throughout these slides as well. This is basically just the slide previous, but in a different setup to help you see, oh look, Conservatives, the blue at the top, have over half. I find that quite easy to help. It does make the Prime Minister very powerful, because if he really, really wanted to, he could turn around to every single one of those Conservative MPs and tell them, you are going to vote with me on this, whether you like it or not, or face the consequences. What's the point of the other parties? What's the point of all that red, yellow, orange? Why are they there? Their job is to hold government to account. That means they don't just go, oh, well, we lost, Boris Johnson will have his way, what a shame. Their job is to go, hold on, Prime Minister, you've not given us the full information. You can't just say that and not justify it. They have to criticise and scrutinise. So the first study theme looks at how we hold government to account. Essentially, this is asking, how good are all those MPs at making sure we don't end up with stupid laws? Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Here are some key terms that for some of you, again, you'll know already. For others, they might be new. I would definitely recommend that you understand the difference in these terms, because I am going to start using them and not tell you what they mean. So I will just be using Parliament in a discussion, and you need to know what Parliament is. So you have a copy here. If you want to make your own notes, go ahead. But I'll just talk you through them just now in case anyone isn't sure. The term Parliament is everyone in those Houses of Parliament. So the members of Parliament, the MPs, the Lords, the Ladies, those whose job it is to represent the public. It's also people who work in the office of MPs, so their admin staff, their secretaries, their supporters, their researchers. So Parliament is everybody, whether you are in charge of the government or not. The government, this is the key group that are in charge of running the country. So the government is a group, usually quite a big. It's where Boris Johnson will take ideas or ask for proper feedback or go, right, guys, we need to do something about coronavirus. Asking my government, we're the ones that are going to make that choice. Cabinet is even smaller. So those first three terms, you've got Parliament, Government, Cabinet. Cabinet are MPs who are appointed to a particular post, so a particular job area to represent. You will often hear them called ministers, not in the religious sense, but they'll be called ministers, cabinet ministers, Secretary of State, and cabinet secretary as well. They meet once a week with Boris Johnson, and there's about 20 of them usually. They lead that area. So you have a health secretary, you have an education secretary. It is their job to lead a department in making improvements in that area. So Boris Johnson can make decisions on everything, but he will pick his cabinet. He gets to pick them from all of his MPs. They have to be MPs, but he gets free choice. Nobody can tell him he can't have them. The Commons, voted in by the public, usually once every 5 years, and the Lords are not elected. You might hear me call them peers or honours. A Labour peer, for example, would be a peer, so someone in the Lords, but who actually is rooting for the Labour Party, or a Conservative peer would be someone in the Lords who was put there by Conservatives or is a fan of the Conservative Party. There are a few hereditary peers left. It used to be that Lords were people who inherited the title Lord from their father. It was very rare to have a woman inherit the title because it always went to the male, even if a female was born first. Thankfully, that system has changed. So Lords are no longer allowed to pass down their title. They can pass it down on paper so their son could become Lord of their estate, their home, their castle, if it were. But they're not allowed to become a Lord in the House of Lords. They now have to be put forward. Anyone can put forward lords or ladies, but they can't pass it down to their children. The legislative is the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Legislative is all about legal. That's how I remember it, because it starts kind of the same way. They have to keep an eye on laws. They can't just pass them because there might be something really stupid in it. They can't just ignore it because Boris Johnson might try and pass it. So the legislative is the bit of the government that has to really check laws, and I mean go down to the crosses on the T's and the dots on the I's, that close. What I'll also add here, that I couldn't fit on the slide, is the executive. The executive is those in charge. So your government and cabinet are the executive, the ones making the decisions. They are executing the decisions. They're like a CEO of a company, they're in charge. The legislative is keeping an eye on laws. And the other term you might hear me using is a backbencher. This is an MP who's not in the government. They're not really high in the party. So it could be a Conservative MP, but Boris Johnson doesn't really know them. They don't have a speciality. They do their job. They represent their people, their constituents, the people in the area they represent, but that's about it. They literally sit on the back benches, so the ones at the highest points in the Commons. They're not listened to as much, but they can be very powerful, and we will look at how they can hold the government to account. So as I mentioned, the cabinet, just to give you an idea, what you'll also hopefully see on the slides is anywhere I've taken pictures or information, I've put the website link below. So if you want more information, you can look directly there. The cabinet, here are some key examples. You need to know examples. I've picked these three. Go and have a look at the cabinet list. Who will you be able to remember most come the exam? Matt Hancock is the health secretary. It is his job to look after our NHS. What does it need? What do I need to get it? What does it not have? How do we split the budget for it? Rishi Sunak is the current Chancellor of the Exchequer. His job is slightly different, but it is a cabinet secretary job. It's just a different title. He's in control of the whole country's money and budget. Just going to leave that with you for a second to think about how powerful that person is. Rishi Sunak is in charge of where money goes. How much does education get, health get, immigration, defence? How much extra can we give this to benefits, to charities, to military weapons? That's his job. He has people that help him. Okay, so what you'll see is on the right-hand side, it says 1 Prime Minister, 21 Cabinet Ministers, 98 other ministers. Rishi Sunak will have other people that work under him. So you have Boris Johnson at the top. Rishi Sunak will report to Boris Johnson, but there'll be people under Rishi Sunak doing research that will report to him. Okay, and the last one I've got there as well is Priti Patel. She's the Home Secretary. Again, a slightly different job title. She's a cabinet secretary. She's in charge of immigration. Who gets into our country or not, and why? Do we allow people to come in freely? Do we close our borders? That's her job. So, like I said, executive, the group in charge. If you hear me saying shadow cabinet, shadow minister, this is a person in the other party who will keep a close eye on things. So, at the moment, we have Matt Hancock as the Secretary for Health Secretary, it doesn't matter what way around you put it, with the Conservatives. The Labour Party have a shadow health secretary. That means they will keep a really close eye on what Matt Hancock does, and they will be the first to take him up on stuff because they're probably doing the same research. So most of the big parties down in Westminster will have a Brexit secretary, a shadow chancellor, because they're the ones that will keep an eye on that remit. because it'd be really hard for the leader to keep an eye on every single thing, so they pass it on. And the legislative is the group to challenge laws. I'm now going to take you through how a bill becomes a law. I'm not going to do loads and loads of information on this. You just need to know the gist of it. You won't get asked a question on 20 marks, how does a bill become a law? But it is one way that the government is held to account, because it can be put back again and again and again. A bill is the name that's given to a proposed law. So it's the bit of paper that says, I'd like this to become a law, please. We can't call it a law yet, so we call it a bill. The diagram on the screen there shows you some of the stages that it can possibly go through. And only once it has achieved royal assent at the end is when it becomes an official act of parliament. So an act of parliament is law. The Equality Act is an example of that. So if you look at the first one, the bill starts in the House of Commons. It gets its first reading. That is literally where the person goes, hello, I would like to introduce this law. Here's the title and what it'll do. Okay. The second reading gives a bit more depth. Okay, this is what it does, but here's the nitty-gritty. Here's what will actually happen. It then goes to a committee stage. Now, the committee will be made up of people from different political parties, and their job is to go, what's good, what's bad, what have you completely missed out of this bill that's going to affect people? So the committee will get together. They'll then write a report. Your report stage. Is it a possible bill? Is it totally stupid and going to cause us problems? And then it'll go to the third reading where they sum it up in the House of Commons. Now, after this, the Commons has to pass the law to the House of Lords. And they pretty much repeat the process. However, the Lords literally go over things with a fine-tooth comb. Sometimes the House of Commons can rush to try and put laws through, or it might be the Conservative Party have put out a really big kind of mandate and calling on their MPs to vote. The House of Lords will go over it piece by piece. The Lords can take up to a year to do that, and they're allowed to send it back to the Commons as many times as they like. This is sometimes called ping pong, not literal table tennis, but it can ping pong back from the Lords who send it to the Commons. The Commons go, no, we're not listening to you, take it back. The Lords go, you have to. The Commons makes edits, so it can go back and forth for months and months. If it gets to a stage that the Lords and Commons can agree, this is able to pass, we agree, we support this, it can then be put forward for royal assent. You'll see a bit there that says amendments. That's the making changes Lords and Commons do. Royal assent is when the Queen officially makes this law. Now, the Queen effectively is rubber stamping the law. She's never actually turned down a law her government present to her. The Queen is our head of state, but she's a figure. She has no political power. The Queen is not allowed to take a view. So the Queen is not allowed to vote. She's not allowed to say, I like Labour or Conservative or SNP or Lib Dem. She has to be neutral, a bit like me. But she will rubber stamp it. Is there any point? Some people ask, well, it's tradition, I suppose, and it is ensuring that we've gone through the checks and balances to get there, but arguably, she's never turned one down. Here is an example, government bill. There are different kinds of bills. This one was taken directly from the government. So Boris Johnson and his group got together and they introduced the coronavirus bill of 2020. This was to outline things like PPE, how the NHS would survive, stay-home procedures. However, you can also introduce a bill as a private member. So that's an MP goes, hey, I've got something that I think should happen. Now, the example of this I used is selfishly because I was actually in Parliament the day this happened. The European Union referendum bill was introduced originally by a Conservative MP, a backbencher, so someone who wasn't really well known to the government. He was a Conservative and a member of Parliament. That was about it. And he decided to take this private member's bill because at the time, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, was not calling for an EU referendum. He said, no, we're in the EU, let's leave it at that, we don't need a vote. The MP who introduced this said, we do need a vote. Even if it means staying, the people have a right to have a free say. And on the 5th of July 2013, when I was on a course in the Houses of Parliament for teaching modern studies, on the screens at the side, and I'll never forget it, it came up that that's when that bill passed the reading. And I have a copy of that bill somewhere in my house that I really need to find. because that's now history. So that is an example of someone who can make a change coming forward that's not in the government. What about Scotland? How does this impact us? Well, do Scottish MPs get a say? Yes. Their vote is absolutely equal. The SNP is the third largest party. It's got a significant amount of power in Westminster at the moment. Labour and Conservative MPs who are from Scotland can also influence decisions. They can go with or against their political party. Can Scottish MSPs influence Westminster? So this is a question asking, could people in Holyrood, in the Edinburgh Parliament, actually have a say in what happens down south? Yes, actually. Our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, talks with the Prime Minister. Most recently, she's been invited to COBRA meetings. These are Cabinet Office briefing room agendas, I think. Essentially, it's key meetings. So recently it's been to do with coronavirus. COBRA meetings are often called after terror attacks or even a terror attack in a nearby country that we're worried we might have a fallout from. And MSPs will work with MPs over Brexit decisions. There's discussion back and forth. Does Westminster influence Scottish politics? Absolutely. They have so many things we cannot make our own laws on. They also fund the Scottish Parliament. So a lot of Scottish people pay taxes, which goes to Westminster. Westminster then gives us our allocation of money to run the country in Scotland. You don't need to know all the details about that. If you are particularly interested in how that's funded, do send me an email or ask me and I'll get you the information, because it is interesting, but I also don't want to give you more information and make you panic that you need to remember it all. If you disagree with me and you want lots, do tell me. So that's pretty much it for lesson 1 and 2. You will see a list of questions I would like you to work through. I will be checking in to see that you've done them, because I do need to make sure you're engaging in the work. But if you decide to do half a job, it's on you. This comes back to you. You are higher now. You got more responsibility at national, or for those of you who did nationals and hires last year, you'll know what's coming. But for those doing hires for the first time, be organised, be sorted, and ask questions. Let me know how you get on. We'll have a live later in the week, and I'll post another video with more work for you tomorrow.